All right, let's talk about studying. Think about all those hours you've poured into learning something new. Well, what if I told you that you might have been doing it all wrong? It turns out the most common ways we try to learn are, well, they're actually the least effective. Today, we're going to dig into the real science of how to make knowledge actually stick.
I mean, really think about it. All those late nights poring over textbooks, all that highlighting, are those trusty habits really helping you? Or are they just giving you a false sense of confidence? We're about to break down what cognitive science says about real, lasting learning, and it might just surprise you.
Okay, so first up, let's just call out the habits that pretty much all of us are guilty of. It turns out our instincts for how to learn things effectively, they're often way off base.
Let's talk about the big two. First, rereading your notes over and over. You know, it feels productive, right? The text starts to look really familiar, but that's the trap. Psychologists call this an illusion of knowing. You mistake that familiarity for actual mastery. And then there's everyone's favorite, cramming, also known as massed practice. Look, an all-nighter might just get you a passing grade on the test tomorrow, but that knowledge is built on sand. It vanishes almost as fast as you learned it.
And listen, this isn't just my opinion. This is the cold, hard truth from cognitive scientists. The authors of the book Make It Stick put it so bluntly. The very strategies we prefer, the ones that feel right, are scientifically shown to be the worst things we can do. We're all working hard, but we're definitely not working smart.
So to really get why those old habits are so bad, we have to understand something fundamental about our own brains. We are literally built to forget. Let's peek under the hood at the science.
Okay, so this is a classic model of how your memory works. Information comes in through your senses, it hangs out for a bit in your short-term memory, and then only some of it, a tiny fraction, actually makes it into long-term storage. But here's the kicker. See all those arrows pointing down? At every single step of the way, there's an exit ramp called forgetting. Our brains aren't designed to be hard drives, they're designed to constantly shed what they think is useless information. And this graph, wow, this is the forgetting curve. And it shows you just how brutal that process is. The drop-off is absolutely staggering. If you don't do anything to reinforce what you've learned, you can lose about half of it in just a couple of days. This is not a personal failure, okay? It's not you. It's just how our brains are wired. So the real question is, how do we fight back? So, if we're basically fighting a brain that's designed to forget, how do we ever make anything stick around for good? Well, the great news is that science has given us the playbook. There are strategies that work with our brains, not against them.
And it boils down to two core ideas. They've got fancy names, retrieval practice, and spaced repetition. But I promise, the concepts behind them are incredibly simple. Think of these as the 1-2 punch against forgetting.
First up is retrieval practice. This is the complete opposite of rereading. Instead of passively looking at your notes, you force yourself to pull the information out of your own head. Think about it like a workout. Rereading is just looking at the dumbbell. Retrieval is actually lifting the weight. It's that effort of recalling that strengthens the memory pathway.
And the second part of the combo is spaced repetition. This is the ultimate weapon against cramming. Instead of one monster 8-hour study session, you do multiple, much shorter sessions, but spread them out over a few days or even weeks. This gives your brain the downtime it needs to consolidate those memories, to move them from fragile to permanent.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. It sounds good in theory. It makes sense. But in the real world, does it actually make that big of a difference?
Oh yeah, it's not just big, it's dramatic. Just look at this study where they taught people Spanish vocabulary. Both groups studied for the exact same amount of time, 30 minutes total. The group that crammed it all in one go, 10 days later, they'd forgotten half the words. But the group that spaced it out into 3 10-minute sessions, they remembered over 90%. And get this, a month later, the space group still remembered 85%, while the crammers were basically back to square one. The evidence is just undeniable.
So how can we actually use these incredibly powerful ideas in our busy modern lives? Well, it turns out there's a whole learning approach built around this. It's called microlearning. And a key thing here, this isn't just about taking a long video and chopping it into smaller pieces. True microlearning means intentionally designing the content from the start to be a short,
focused, self-contained lesson that teaches you one specific thing. This is such a great way to think about it. You're not just tearing chapters out of a textbook, you're creating entirely new little booklets, and each one has its own very specific goal. It's an approach that's built from the ground up to play to the strengths of how our brains actually work.
And the results? They're pretty incredible. Research out of Dresden University found that this kind of bite-sized learning can improve your focus and long-term retention by up to 80%. That's just a staggering improvement in learning efficiency.
So why does it work so well? Well, for one, it reduces cognitive overload, so your brain isn't just getting swamped with info. It's designed to fit into the little gaps in your day, which means you're much more likely to actually do it. And because it feels so much more manageable, learners are 4 times more likely to actually finish the course. Plus, you can do it anytime, anywhere.
So, let's bring this all home. The big takeaway here is really simple. Effective learning isn't about more hours or more highlighting. It's about smarter effort. It's about letting go of those old habits that feel productive and instead embracing the strategies that are actually aligned with how our brains are designed.
So that leaves us with one final question for you. Learning isn't some fixed talent. It's a skill, and you can get better at it. Now that you know the science behind what actually works, what's one small change you're going to make to start working with your brain instead of against it? Thanks for joining this explainer.